Jesus quotes Scripture, part 6. We're going to be in Luke 23 and Hosea 10. Again, like week 1, this particular quotation is unique to Luke. Luke 23, verses 26 and 27.
Now as they led him away, they laid hold of a certain man, Simon of Cyrene, who was coming from the country. And on him they laid the cross that he might bear it after Jesus. And a great multitude of the people followed him, and women who also mourned and lamented him.
Luke is always, he more than the other writers really, was making sure we understood the importance that the women played in Jesus' life and ministry and the whole thing. And we've talked about that before, so I'm not going to go through all that again, the important role of women. But Simon is kind of interesting, and he sort of plays into some of the things I want to say today. Simon is mentioned in 3 out of the 4 Gospels, and in Mark we're told that he's the father of Alexander and Rufus, which means nothing to us, but in Alexander and Rufus's day, Simon, the Cyrenian father of Alexander, oh yeah, we know Al and Rufus, that kind of thing. So we don't know exactly who Alexander and Rufus were, but they must have been known in their day kind of thing. In Romans 16:13, I want to tie something together with you about Simon, because we've got no indication at the cross, this scene that we're looking at, we've got no indication that Simon knew Jesus at all. It says he was coming in from the country. Probably, a lot of the Jews would save their whole lives to be able to go to one Passover in Jerusalem. So he's coming in, and the scene is that they're kind of like at the gate on their way out of the city. He's making his way into the city, and the Romans, who, by the way, because they occupied Israel, they could take anybody at any time and put them into Roman service. Just take them off the street, didn't matter, and make them do whatever they wanted. So this is not unusual for a Roman soldier, when Jesus falls down under the weight of the cross, to grab somebody who happened to be Simon, who was making his way in, who his dream is coming true. I'm finally at Jerusalem. I'm going to enjoy a Passover. What the heck is going on over here? And he happens to stumble into this situation, and the Romans throw Jesus' cross on his shoulder. In Romans 16:13, if somebody has, just read that one verse.
Greet Rufus, chosen in the Lord, and his mother, who has been a mother to me too.
Now this is Paul talking. It says, say hello to Rufus, a great guy. He's chosen. And his mother, who's been like a mother to me. Whew, how would you like to have that title? Paul say, you've been like a dad to me. You've been like a mother to me. These are some really, really special people. But we also know that this whole situation was following the cross. What I'm trying to say is that Paul's greeting at the end of Romans means something happened to Rufus, Alexander, and Simon and his mother and whatever. This whole group of people, something happened as a result of Simon carrying the cross of Jesus. Now that in itself I'll preach all day. Carrying the cross of Jesus and becoming a Rufus. It's really a good message. That's not exactly what I'm talking about. All I know is that Simon came in for one thing, coming to enjoy the Passover, and got another. Something very unexpected. Here, grab this cross. I don't know, and I don't want to get way off in conjecture land, but if I'm putting myself in Simon's position, coming in to see my dream fulfilled, and I get a nightmare, I'm not happy with the Romans, to be honest with you. I hate the thought that they could just grab me, throw me on the ground, and tell me to carry this guy's cross. I'm not even sure I know who this guy is, and I don't know what he's done, but it can't be good. And now I got to carry the cross while he stumbles along. This is not my greatest experience. But something did happen between that moment when he carried that cross and Romans 16. Something happened that turned someone who could have looked at a situation with a lot of anger, a lot of hatred, to looking at this God of love. So, let's read a little further. The rest of if somebody's got Luke 23, verses 28 through 31.
Jesus, turning to them, said, Daughters of Jerusalem, do not weep for me, But weep for yourselves and for your children. For indeed the days are coming in which they will say, Blessed are the barren, wombs that never bore, and breasts that never nursed. And then they will begin to say to the mountains, Fall on us, and the hills, cover us. For if they do these things in the green wood, what will be done in the dry?
Jesus calls them daughters of Jerusalem, and a lot of the commentaries say, well, he was in Jerusalem, they were the ladies of Jerusalem, so he's just referring to them as daughters of Jerusalem. We can't say for sure. I don't buy that, because daughters of Jerusalem is an expression that's used throughout the Old Testament. And it's not just for daughters of Jerusalem. So to pigeonhole it there, I'm not as comfortable. There's a lot of Old Testament references. The three that came to mind to me right away was when Sennacherib surrounds Jerusalem in King Hezekiah's day, calls for a prophet, gets a prophetic word, they stand on the prophetic word, the whole thing. And part of the prophetic word is the daughters of Zion, the daughters of Jerusalem, both of them, laugh you to scorn, talking about Sennacherib. To think that you can kill the Christ is laughable, quite frankly. To think that you can wipe out God's people is laughable, quite frankly. The daughters of Zion laugh you to scorn. That's a really nice way of Jesus calling the daughters of Zion, don't weep for me. I know, I look like I'm out of control here, right? I'm totally in control here. That's what freaks Pilate out, remember? He says, you have no power except what I'm giving you. You think you're the powerful one here? I'm the powerful one. You'll find out 3 days from now. For now, I know what it looks like, but I know what's going on here. Daughters of Zion, don't weep for me. In Zechariah 9:9, it would have been the week before. Remember Palm Sunday? It's the fulfillment of Zechariah 9:9. Rejoice greatly, O daughter of Zion. Shout, O daughter of Jerusalem. Behold, your king is coming to you. He is just and having salvation. That just happened the week before. Not even a full week before. A few days before. And it's almost like he's saying, daughters of Jerusalem, don't weep for me. Do you remember the processional? The king is here. The king is here. Don't cry for me. Don't weep for me. But the one that I was thinking of the most was from Song of Solomon. If you've never read the book, read the book. It's a beautiful, beautiful book. It's a phenomenal love story. And although it zeroes in on one woman, the daughters of Jerusalem are mentioned repeatedly. What was available through the one was available for the daughters of Jerusalem. In other words, a love story. There's a love story. You can say all kinds of things. For me, the point is this. It's the worst possible event of Jesus' life. What's going on at that moment, it doesn't get any worse. And who's he thinking about? Others. Who's he caring about? Others. Who's he warning? Others. Who's he encouraging? Others. And what he's basically saying is you got to look beyond the present to the promises. You see, I'm wondering, I'm back on Simon again. I'm wondering if he's dragging this cross and he's hearing this guy who's been beaten to a pulp, when he's got all these people weeping for him, turn to them and say, don't weep for me. Because there's some days ahead for you guys that are going to be awful. If I'm Simon, I'm wondering what kind of a man shows concern and care for others when he's about to be nailed to a cross. Where is his head and heart at? And it's others. It's always about others. It's not the situation I find myself in, oh, woe is me. It's like, oh, woe is you. When you don't see the green tree suffering out there in the flood, all you're left with is something dry. Because that was the last thing they would say, if they do this to a green tree, what are they going to do to the dry? He says, don't weep for me. Weep for yourselves and your children, because the days are coming when they, and the most important word in the passage is they. A lot of people have screwed up this passage because they think God's saying stuff. He's not saying any of this. They will say, they will do. If he's prophesying about anything, it's what they're going to do in the face of this warning. And he gives them a passage from Hosea, from the past, because this warning was given before. And they did the same thing back then that they're doing now, that they're going to do again. Obviously, they're not the same people. These people all died. But that same spirit, that same mindset, that same heart set of humanity is the they. And this is what they do. Weep for yourselves and your children, because the days are coming when they will do three things. Number one, they change the blessing of God into it's not a blessing. Did you catch that? When he says, the day's coming when they're going to say it's not blessed to have children. It's always blessed to have children. Children come from God. Psalm 127, they are a heritage and a blessing from God. When you start saying that children are not a blessing from God, you're perverting and distorting the blessings of God. You know in the school systems that they teach situation ethics. Well, no, that's not always the case. That's not always right. Well, I got news for you. God's always right. That's the good news. He doesn't make mistakes, and he's always right, and there's no such thing as situation ethics.
Yeah.
You don't say a blessing of God is not a blessing. We can go to Isaiah 5:20, what God says about those people who call evil good and good evil. Situation ethics. Turning the blessings of God, perverting them, inverting them because of your sinful state. Anybody want to read Isaiah 5:20?
Woe to those who call evil good and good evil, who put darkness for light and light for darkness, who put bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter.
And he starts by saying, woe, I'm warning you. If you do those things, woe. And that's what they're doing. That's the first thing he says. They'll pervert and invert the blessings of God, calling evil good and good evil.